It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am your host. Glad to be here, however long or short that period may be. With what we see happening in our nation right now with censorship, I don't expect that that'll be a whole lot longer, but we're going to continue to press on until we don't have an alternative. You know, we're going to cover 4 topics this morning, and I want to touch base with you. You know, part of our goal is to dispel the propaganda that is fostered and pumped into Americans' eyes and ears every single day. And one of the phrases that we use is delivering truth and exposing mainstream propaganda. And the reason we say that is because I have personally decided a long time ago that I will not stand by and allow the misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda to be promulgated on Americans, where our press is manipulating us. We are being played like fools. So we're going to talk about 4 topics this morning that address that. The first issue is Common Core. Today, if you don't know, and if you haven't sent your kid to school yet, stop right now. Don't let your kid go. We're going to cover the Don't Send Your Kid to School Day, or Don't Send Your Kid to School Today Day. And essentially, we're asking parents across the nation to protest Common Core and its implementation. And I'll tell you why when we hit the Common Core topic in a minute or two. The truth of the matter is, if you knew what Common Core really was all about, you would be outraged and you would be demanding the head of your school people, your National Department of Education, and the monsters who are behind all of this, their heads on a stick. The truth is, Common Core is dangerous for America. It is propaganda personified, and it's being pumped into the minds of your children right now. Not to mention, it's the number one abuse of data and abuse of power, frankly, to gather data on your children. They're building massive databases on your children. Everything that they do, everything they touch, their retinal scans, their fingerprints. I'm telling you, folks, if you think the NSA and what they're doing to you as an adult is bad, wait until you find out what Common Core has in store for you. I got to tell you, this is beyond the scope of anything that most parents even understand or conceive of. And I have to tell you, because we're older and we went to school at an earlier period in time when our nation wasn't quite so determined to destroy us, we're not accustomed to and willing to grasp and put our arms around the depth of the depravity of this system. But I've got to tell you something. If you do not wake up soon, Common Core will be implemented across the nation, and you will be subjected to it, and your children will be subjected to it for generations to come. This is an experiment that is on a par with Mengelé's medical experiments on children, except they're experimenting with your child's mind. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is unacceptable, and it is a betrayal of everything that your nation and your government is supposed to represent to you. Our second topic is going to be, who among us will heed the call? I recently wrote a piece, and I posted it up on our website this morning, or I will in a little bit. I posted it on our Facebook page over the weekend, and I'm going to read it because I think it personifies where we stand. And if you want to understand what a constitutional, conservative, patriotic American believes, I think this sums it up. Our third topic is going to be Bloomberg and how he has abdicated truth for treason against our or in favor of our sworn enemy, China. Sworn enemy is right. And it is time we started treating China like the enemy that they are. They are a sworn enemy. They are a communist country. They subvert and censor their news constantly. They are working against the United States of America every single day, diplomatically, politically, professionally, economically, financially. Every aspect of our international relationship with China supersedes our Constitution and the rights of our government to interface with that nation against your best interest. They are working against your best interest in common with an enemy of the state. Telling you folks, stop letting these idiots in the propagandic these news organizations tell you that China is our friend. They're the second largest economy, shortly to be the first, and they are doing anything and everything in their power to undermine your nation. And it is time we began to treat them like the enemy that they are. I'm telling you, if you do not recognize it shortly, you will awaken one morning to find that the nation that your founders and your ancestors fought for has been sold and given away to an enemy by your leadership. Our fourth topic is Americans must stand in defense of our nation. And I'm going to wrap this program today with some examples of where that comes from and why I'm saying that. We are so far down the rabbit hole of tyranny, treason, terror that is being promulgated on you by your own government. I know this sounds harsh. I know that this sounds like I am a voice in the wilderness, and I am. I'm Paul Revere, riding through the community, shouting from the housetops, awaken. The enemy is here. The barbarians are not at the gates. They are through the gates. They are eating your children. They are raping and pillaging your land. I've had some people say to me, you know what? Sometimes you're too intense, and I just got to shut it off. I get it. But guess what? The time for sitting by and allowing others to make your decisions is over, ladies and gentlemen. Where we stand today is so far gone, so far outside the scope of what we can and should be willing to accept, that it is beyond comprehension that we allow this to continue in our nation. I don't care how apathetic you have become. I don't care how many antidepressants you're taking. I don't care how far you've been compromised by EBT or welfare or Medicare, Medicaid. It's time you stood up and said, I am willing, I am demanding that my nation do the right thing, even when it's against my own best immediate interest, because my check will stop or my food stamps will be cut. Or I'm telling you, you're going to lose it all anyway. And when that day comes, what are you going to say then? We should have done something. We coulda, woulda, shoulda. Action now is the solution. What is that? What form does that action take? We're going to talk about that in our fourth segment. How Americans must stand in defense of our nation. Because I'm telling you that unless we commit massive, peaceful, civil acts of disobedience, we are done as a nation. You may as well just crawl into your hole and wait for them to come and lock you up into the chains. I'm so frustrated about it because I feel like I am sitting here talking and I see the number of people that catch this show. And I say to myself, where are our leaders? Where are these people who are allegedly the kings of talk radio? Instead of sitting there demanding a solution, they sit there and just pontificate while they sell their crap. We don't sell a thing here except truth, and it's free. You know what the cost is? You got to listen for 2 hours. Common Core. Let's get into our first topic. I've got 20 minutes to beat this thing to death. Let me tell you something about Common Core and what's really going on. If you have not kept your child home from school today, do so. If your child has already left for school, go down, submit a request through the principal's office and get your kid out of school. And then make sure that you are expressing whether you've kept them home for school or you are sending them, you are going to go get them from school. Express why you are taking your child out. And the reason you're taking your child out is because you are in protest of Common Core. This is a national protest today, and I'm telling you right now, you will not hear the media talk about it because they don't want to. They've been sold, coerced, compromised, and they have been co-opted. Nobody talks about it. Well, let me tell you why. Even Fox News, the people who run Fox News, Murdoch and Roger Ailes, sit on boards that participate in Common Core. So you're not going to hear it about from them. You're not going to hear about it from MSLSD because they're so deep down into the rabbit hole of treason, they'll never tell you what the truth is, and they support and propagandize on behalf of it. ABC, CBS, NBC, Communist News Network, all of them. You're not going to hear about newspapers talking about it unless it's alternative media. The New American has articles out about it all the time. MissouriansAgainstCommonCore.com. Go find some of these websites and educate yourself about what is being done to your child. Your kid is being walked down the lane of brainwashing. This is nothing less than that, ladies and gentlemen. There's a bunch of websites out. Go out to whatiscommoncore.wordpress.com. Whatiscommoncore.wordpress.com. Go out to Missouri Coalition Against Common Core. It's M-O, against commoncore.com. Go to the New American. Educators expose the dangers of Common Core's national education program. Go to FreedomWorks, the battle against Common Core standards. There is tons and myriad of information out there that you're not paying attention to because you're lazy or you're apathetic, and your child is suffering as a result of it. If you say, well, I've heard this thing about Common Core, but I don't know anything about it, stop right there. That's your fault because the information is available and you have refused, abdicated your responsibility to your child. I don't care if you don't like it that I'm yelling at you. The truth of the matter is somebody oughta. You are abdicating your responsibility as a parent. You are allowing the state to take control of your child and beat and brainwash them into submission. And you should be ashamed of yourself because the information is available. It is everywhere. Type in Common Core. Type in danger of Common Core. You'll find tons of articles and websites out there about it. Well, I don't look at that stuff because it bothers me. Well, guess what? Your kid coming home and talking to you and reciting the Second Amendment to you incorrectly, the First Amendment incorrectly, reciting. Let me tell you something. You don't get what damage is being done to your child. And you're fostering it. You're assisting in it. You are an active and compliant accessory to the crime. Why? Because you refuse to educate yourself about what is happening around you. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, there is no forgiveness for that sin. You are, as a parent, have an obligation and a responsibility to maintain and educate your child and to educate yourself about what is being done to them. They are being tortured mentally. And I'm telling you right now, if you fail to get up and take action, that's on you. And there's no forgiveness for it. None. It is child abuse. Mental, emotional, physical, mental child abuse. And it's time somebody called you out on the carpet and said, I've had enough out of you. Do your job as a parent. Pull your kid out of school. Demand that they stop the Common Core standards in your state and fight it tooth and nail. Make that your sole mission. Well, I'm only one person. What can I do? That's what you can do. You can show up at a school board meeting and raise holy hell. You can start going to your state house and demanding that they stop it. No one is even aware that this is going on. Well, they're state standards. They're not national standards. Bunk. That's a lie. This crap is being promulgated by Arne Duncan from the Department of Education, and it is in cooperation and concert with the most outrageous, outlandish, progressive, liberal, Agenda 21, UNESCO, United Nations, Education for the Masses sycophants you can find. The people like Bloomberg and Bill Gates and the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're the ones who are promoting it. The United Nations is promoting it. You don't trust the United Nations to walk your dog. So why do you insist on allowing them to control the mind of your child? The heck kind of a parent are you? Listen, I can cite reams and reams and reams of information. But if you're not willing to stand up and do the right thing for yourself and your kid, then you're hopeless. One of the textbooks that they got is A History of the U.S. by Joy Hakem. It's a comprehensive textbook on American history, and it's universally regarded as having a strong liberal bias. Listen to what some of the people have had to say. Examination of Hakem's material discloses many errors, including errors of fact, of chronology, and terminology, as well as unjustifiable assertions and displays of bias. That's an author and a historian by the name of Alice Wheely. She gave a scathing analysis of this book to the Textbook League, which reviews education material for accuracy. Joy Hakem should not attempt to write about Western history, particularly the history of Europe, because she obviously hasn't had enough training in these subjects. It is a shame that Oxford University Press has let her get away with so many falsehoods and with such extreme exhibition of bias. Your kids are going to be studying this book. It's called The History of Us. A History of Us. The Next Generation Science Standards. Now, by the way, they tell you originally Common Core is only for language, and that it's going to be for math and science, math and language. That's a lie. They're currently working on history and science right now, and they are bending and manipulating your child's mind to do it. The Next Generation Science Standards, a scheme that's been developed by Common Core to force American students to learn a steady stream of controversial propaganda on everything from the history of evolution to largely debunked theories advanced by UN global warming alarmists. Listen to this. Quote, human activities, such as the release of greenhouse gases from burning fossil fuels, are major factors in the current rise of Earth's mean surface temperature for global warming. This is the stuff that your kid is being taught. Now, this is despite the fact that for the last 15 years, CO2 released from fossil fuels represents a tiny fraction of the greenhouse gases that are present naturally in the atmosphere. Everyone admits that global warming has actually ceased for the last 20 years. And every nation on Earth, including Australia, who just turned around as a nation and went back to the United Nations and said, no more nonsense out of you, no more mandates, climate change arguments have been ceased and stopped right here. We're not going to participate in your carbon credit scheme to defraud our population and steal our money. We're done with it, finished with it. Don't come back here again with another climate change hoax. The whole nation of Australia, people. Every nation in Europe is backing away from it. China won't follow it. India won't follow it. They're the two largest propagators of carbon into the atmosphere. So, but yet your sycophantic president, this treasonous usurper who's not even an American citizen, has defrauded us with a birth certificate, lied to the American people. I can't even begin to go through the scandals of Fast and Furious and the IRS and tons of others. And this guy is bending our nation through unauthorized and unconstitutional mandates through the EPA, which is an extra-constitutional organization in the first place, to manipulate and destroy the United States from the inside. And your kid is being taught that not only is it a good thing, it's acceptable and allowed. The real agenda behind this is real simple. Karl Marx, in the Communist Manifesto, made it very clear. And I'm going to read it to you. Communist government-controlled schooling is essential to achieving the goals of socialism. Let me tell you something. The truth of the matter is they'll tell you this is a state-led program. First of all, in my state, Missouri, there is an actual constitutional prohibition against federal intervention in our schooling. And yet Common Core is exactly that. They have utilized literally billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to bribe the 46 states that have agreed to it. 46 out of 50. All of it with money come out of where? The stimulus. Well, how does that have anything to do with stimulus? That's not stimulating jobs. That's stimulating mind-altering and mind-bending mind control. There's nothing stimulating about it. This has nothing to do with the stimulus package. This doesn't create jobs. $987 billion stolen, misused, misabused, misappropriated, and a lot of it is going to institute Common Core in your state. They're bribing the states by saying, if you want this money, you've got to implement Common Core. And the states are doing it. And then they call it something else. In Missouri, they say, oh, well, it's not a federal program, it's a state-led program. Let me tell you something. That's a bunch of crap. Arne Duncan, this is the same guy, by the way, who's the head of the Department of Education. He is also the guy, for the record, that created a book for distribution to freshmen in high school back before he was the Department of Education head. And then this book, he's gay. And this book promoted the gay lifestyle to 15-year-old kids to the point where it described how a child could be fisted anally with your fist safely. And at the end of the book, it gave them a list of all the gay bars in the area in which he distributed this manual. Why are you distributing a list of gay bars to 15-year-old kids who don't even have the right to drink for another 6 or 7 years? What kind of insanity is that? This guy runs the Department of Education. You want to hear a couple of the quotes from him? I'll tell you what, this guy should be charged with treason. He quotes former South African President Nelson Mandela, who, by the way, is an admitted communist. The most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world is education. The United States provides over $1 billion annually to partner countries to work on educational reform. Our goal for the coming year will be to work closely with global partners, including UNESCO, to promote quantitative improvements and system strengthening. This is the guy who's running and controlling your child's education. Cradle to career continuum and educational mandates. And I'm telling you, they say, oh, well, wait a second, we have the right to modify the curriculum. That's a lie. Look at the statistics. The companies that own the copyrighted information have declared that under Common Core standards, a state can only change 15% of the curriculum. 15. That means that 85% of the stuff that your child is going to learn is going to be indoctrination. Nothing more, nothing less. And you, as a parent, have abdicated your responsibility because you refuse to sit down and shut off the television set and shut off the sitcom and all the crap that you do and pay attention to what's really happening to your kid. I'm telling you, this is a clarion call to get your crap together. As a parent, this should be your only function, responsibility. It is your duty. It is your obligation. And if you have abdicated it, then you have failed your child, failed your family, your community, your state, and your nation. And I don't care if you think it's too harsh. I'm tired of parents saying, well, I don't know. I don't want to upset those people at the school. I've kept my own kid home today. You know what? You know what he said? I don't want retribution. And I said, well, I'll be the first one to tell your school that if there's retribution, he said, stop right there, Dad. You don't know how retribution can be done. It can be very subtle. They can block me from getting scholarships to a college. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the example. That is the definition of tyranny. When you fear your government to the point where you are afraid to speak out because you may have retribution, what more do you want? The teachers are going to be graded on this. They don't even know. Do you know that the teachers are not even allowed to know what the content of the testing is? It's done on computers. They're not allowed to see it. And they're going to be held accountable for the results. So they're going to teach to the Common Core standard because that's what the testing is going to be. Bill Gates himself said that when this thing is fully aligned, the tests and the teaching will be 100% in alignment. I'm telling you right now, you have absolutely failed your child if you do not stand up and fight this till the bitter end, till death if necessary. Your states are funding it. Your federal government is funding it. They are funding your demise and the indoctrination and the mind-altering manipulation of your child with your money. And they have your absolute compliance in it because you've refused to stand up. You have refused to go to your school board and say, if you implement this, we will tar and feather you and run you out on a rail. We're not going to vote you out. We're going to drag you out. Ladies and gentlemen, the school board in your community belongs to you. And if you are unwilling to stand up and take responsibility for your child's education, that is the one duty you as a parent have. It's not to feed your kid. It's not to give them a warm bed. It's not to make sure they've got a car and an iPhone. It's not to make sure that they are comfortable and happy. Your sole responsibility as a parent is to make sure that your child is what? Protected. And protected from the treasonists and traitors like these people who are trying to indoctrinate your child. And indoctrinate your child to hate you. That's even worse. Their goal is to separate your relationship, to cut the cord, to snip the umbilical cord between the child and the family. And you're allowing it to happen. You're participating, you're assisting, you are cooperative. And cooperation, when you know what the alternatives are, cooperation in the face of guilty knowledge is unacceptable. It is a forbidden position for you to take. I don't care if you're angry about this, that I'm pointing the finger at you. If you're one of the few parents who have actually done something about Common Core, you're separated from this argument. If you're one of the parents who has not done something about it, the fault's on you. And this holds all of its power and all of its pressure and all of its indictment against you. I'm sick of people standing around saying, well, what can I do? There's a million things you can do. You can demand that your school stop promoting it and teaching it. You can insist that your school board revoke and reject it. You can go out there and get a petition together in your own community to submit to your school board that says, we don't want Common Core standards in our schools. You can go to your state house and scream and yell about it. You can fight against the legislation. You can stop the appropriation of money to pay for it. In my home state of Missouri, they didn't even call it Common Core because they knew what the results would be. So they called it something else, MSL or SML or some other garbage name. The truth of the matter is they didn't ask our legislature for approval to institute it. They just did. And now they're coming back to our legislature and saying, well, we need $500 million to fully implement it. And our state legislature says, fully implement what? We don't even know what you're talking about. $500 million bucks. To implement what? The state legislature doesn't even know what Common Core is. I mean, what more proof do you need? When they run it underneath the radar in front of your own state legislature, and then have the nerve, the unmitigated gall to come back and demand money to implement something which they haven't even notified your legislature about. It's shameful. It's disgusting. It's treasonous. In its own small way, locally, communally, it is treason. And you know what? If you as a parent haven't done something about it, then you have committed the worst of all crimes. You have committed self-treason. And I don't care whether you like it or not. Get off the stick and do something. Stop sitting around whining about how everything's going wrong and start taking some concrete action. Do something. Write an article. Put it in your paper. Write to your paper. Do an interview with them. Get in front of your school board. Don't accept their nonsense. Demand change. We're going to take a break. Man, am I fired up about this. If you don't recognize Common Core for what it is, that's because you haven't been willing to take the time to do the homework. And if you haven't been willing to do that, then all of your protestations about how wonderful your children are and how much you love them is a lie. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. We'll be right back. Find our articles and our stories and our news on the web. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org. You can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can find our YouTube channel where we post all of our shows up on YouTube in video and audio. You can find that by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Guys, I don't know what, you can go onto our website and download our links where you can have an audio file that you can play back. If you're not willing to sit down and educate yourself and your neighbors and your community about this, hey, listen, I don't know what, I'm wasting my time. My breath is wasted. My research, my time, my effort, it's wasted because you refuse to take the information given to you and do something with it. We'll be right back. You know, yesterday I was sitting there and I was working on, actually it's Saturday, and I was working on some information. Granted, I admit I'm a news junkie. I don't expect everybody to be, but I do expect you when the news is out there and it's available for you to educate yourself about it, that you're going to do something about it. And the one thing that kept running through my mind over and over and over and over and over again as I read and educated myself and studied to show myself approved was that there doesn't seem to be any leadership left in this nation that is willing to stand up and do what's right. So I penned this piece and I threw it up there, and it was prompted by a guy who wrote me an article, or wrote me a note, and he's from England. And I got to tell you, it just shook me to my core when I read what he had to say. This fella had written me this piece, and he didn't write it as a piece. He wrote it. I'm going to find it for you right now. But he wrote this statement there where he lives in England, and he is. Basically, in England, there are no alternatives to everyone is silent. The press has been completely bought off and so forth and so on. I can't even find it for you. But I can read you this piece. I started it in response to him. And he asked, he said, why is it that here in England, no one talks about these things? The press hides it. Our ministers are quiet about it. And it prompted me to write this. I wonder where our wise, enlightened elders are hiding, or if they even exist at all. Where are all our men of wisdom and integrity, men of grit and determination for justice? Where are our men of courage? I ask myself if the entire planet and all men of virtue have fallen. Is our nation so self-centered and so selfish as to be lured into the self-treason of short-term gain, immediate gratification, and corruption? I find it eternally frustrating to the point where sometimes I just simply want to fade away. For where shall we look for strength and guidance and encouragement? Where are our heroes? Even now, those with power and reach, influence, and ability to make a difference are silent when and where it really counts. They play at a kabuki theater of sorts, feigning outrage while deflating their own arguments, values, ethics, and virtue, because they have capitulated to darkness. It would seem that they have sold their very souls, compromised and marginalized themselves willingly, purposely, under pressure and coercion. So who shall we rally behind? Who is worthy of our trust, our effort, our support, our loyalty, even unto our very blood? The words of Patrick Henry, our brother in time and space are always in the forefront of my mind, resounding throughout all the world. They echo down through the ages in a clarion call, a call to arms, a rousing plea for courage in the face of our own terror. It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. My God, our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Who among us shall heed the call? What manner of peace is worth your very soul, all that you possess, all that you dream, all that you hold dear? Would we sit paralyzed by our fear? Do we surrender before the battle is joined? With or without men of leadership and courage, I fear for the future of not only my nation, but the world. America as a nation has long been the light and the promise of liberty, freedom, and self-governance to oppressed peoples the world over. We have been an example and the living vision of mankind's desire to independently direct its own destiny. We've exemplified a concrete living illustration, one that weary, downtrodden peoples of the world have looked upon, longing to become for so long. We've renewed their faith that they too can succeed in such an endeavor of greatness, ingenuity, creativity, and the promises of liberty and freedom, both now and handed down to future generations. They saw, embodied in us, a promise of something greater, something better that could be realized. Like all peoples, they desire the principles of individual rights, natural rights that supersede and rule governments, rights of self-determination, self-improvement, self-rule, independent thought, and motivation. And they have fought on, taking strength from our example, refusing to fall prey and victim to a Machiavellian ruling elite, indeed unto tyranny itself. But all that has changed, and in my lifetime. Our nation is soft, apathetic, satisfied to no longer seek our highest and our best. We've become content being told what to do, what to think, to take direction, and follow it unerringly, even unto our own demise. And if that light should go out, if we should falter, if we should fail at our own defense, if the pillars of freedom should no longer hold up the roof of liberty itself by our example, then hope itself will be extinguished and fall. The illustration and the vision the rest of the world has always looked upon will crumble into utter decadence and corruption. And this indeed will be a dark planet for a very, very long time. So the question remains, where do you stand? Will you arise to defend and preserve our home, our promise, our history, our nation? Will you look fear in the face and throw yourself into the fray with abandon? For if you would shirk your duty, if you would hide from confrontation, if you would meekly surrender, knowing your demise will result in mere moments, well then, I have only to offer you the words of Samuel Adams. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude more than the animated contest of freedom, then go from us in peace. We ask not your counsel, nor your arms. Crouch down then and lick the hands which feed you. And may your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. America, it is time to arise and be counted, to be fearless, to be fierce, to be courageous in the face of our own fears. We must speak out. We must take action. We must discuss it and speak about it everywhere we go, even when our voice shakes. Will you stand? Will you stand with your children and your family, with your community? Will you stand to protect and defend this nation that has given you all the benefits that you have enjoyed all of your life? Will you rob and steal that opportunity from your own very children? Will you betray yourself? We're out of time. The mounting examples are everywhere around you. The bodies lay everywhere. Time is short. And I don't know about you, but I can say that I don't want to live in a world where my every action is dictated, where I'm monitored, where I'm surveilled, where I'm treated as if I'm just a profile, where I'm manipulated and betrayed, where the only time that I matter is when it's time for me to cast a vote. And the rest of the time I'm treated like livestock to be bought and sold and traded. I don't want to live in a world of slavery. The battle is already actually begun. Patrick Henry that statement could be made today. It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Why are we sitting here talking about it? They cry peace, peace, but there's no peace. The war is on. The gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. My God, our brethren are already in the field. And why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is your life so dear and your peace so sweet that you would purchase it at the price of chains and slavery. What prohibits you from standing up and taking action? What prohibits you? What fear is it of loss or retribution that forces you to sit there knowing the end result will be even worse? And you cower in fear. What is it that you love? What is it that you love so deeply, so desperately, that you are willing to trade it all for this short-term, whatever that is? Is it your wealth? You're willing to trade your liberty for that? For a job, for the security of what? Your Social Security check that's not even guaranteed? You're willing to trade your liberty because you're afraid that you'll lose your job or your car or your home? Oh, it's not so bad, you say. We can get used to it. If you're willing to accept that, then you are lost to us. If the tranquility of servitude is more appealing to you than the animated contest of freedom, then go and leave us in peace. We don't want your counsel. We don't want your help. We don't even want your arms and your assistance. Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you. And when you awaken to the terrible truth, may your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen. I have a prayer of hope and faith. I trust the promise of my Maker, my Creator. I believe in the promise of liberty and freedom. It's given to me by someone far higher. And I will stand even unto my death. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this issue of Bloomberg. How Bloomberg News has abdicated all responsibility to truth to protect their position in China, our sworn enemy. Our enemies have surrounded us on all sides. And instead of cowering in fear, it's time for us to say, we can attack in any direction. That's the good news. We may not survive it, but I'd rather attack than lay here and wait to be slaughtered.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. We're back. You know, today's headlines read like the proof of all these things which I talk about every day. And I'm stunned by Americans' indecisiveness, unwilling to put that at risk, which it's fleeting. It has no value. Whatever it is that you have ascribed your loyalty to, it has no value. Instead, we sit here and try to rationalize our own self-treason. That's the willful knowledge that we are betraying our own best interests. We hear everywhere that our leadership is doing things on our behalf and for our best interest, that China is our friend, Russia is our friend. Really? Well, it's time that we called those two countries what they are. They're sworn enemies of liberty and freedom. Both countries. There's a guy in Bloomberg who works for the Bloomberg Financial Times. Financial Times is not a Bloomberg-owned entity, by the way. I mean the Bloomberg Financial Network, and they have their own this guy who has written many articles in the past, including some that were quite negative about the Chinese leadership. The last time he wrote one, they were threatened to have their news desk kicked out of China. And this guy wrote an article about the ties that the wealthiest men in China have to the families of the top Chinese leaders. And it's an investigative report. He's been working on it for the better part of a year with help from their editor and a host of other writers within the organization. And suddenly, at the 11th hour and 59th minute, they cancel the publication of it, and he gets fired. The New York Times put out a piece that says Bloomberg News is said to curb an article that might anger China. A guy named Matthew Winkler, he's the longtime editor-in-chief of Bloomberg News, and he actually came out and said, if we run the story, we'll be kicked out of China. He defended his decision to say to block this story. And by the way, Michael Bloomberg was instrumental. The nanny mayor from New York was instrumental because he's the head of Bloomberg News. That's his organization. And he was the guy who put the final kibosh on it. And he defended this decision, Winkler did, comparing it to the self-censorship by foreign news bureaus trying to preserve their ability to report inside Nazi Germany. Really? So what you're trying to tell me is that the ends justify the means, and a Machiavellian concept that to sell yourself out and the public, the readership of your organization and Bloomberg News, it's okay to hide stories for fear that you'll be kicked out of the country so that you can continue to report. Well, what's the point of your continuing report if you can't tell the truth? Four people from Bloomberg have come forward, 4 employees, and claim that the company is self-censoring to keep China happy. They've held back this damning investigation into this Chinese billionaire's ties to the government. You see, this is not just happening in China. This is the same exact thing that's happening here. Don't you see the manipulation, the pressure that's on? For anyone in the media to not piss off the administration? Do you wonder why we're not fed truth? Why we're given propaganda by the pound? It's ridiculous. Tom Donahue, the president and the CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, came out the other day and made this statement about why immigration reform is necessary. Because there's not enough Americans to do the job. Let me tell you something. We have a 20% unemployment in this country. Not enough Americans to do the job, or not enough Americans who will do the job as the slave labor you demand. The same kind that's practiced every day in China. The same one that manufactured that Apple iPhone you're walking around with, or that Apple Macintosh laptop you've got. The truth is, the slave labor camps in China are notorious. But the media is afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to talk about the corruption. They're afraid to talk about the communist dictatorship. Instead, we've got idiots like John Kerry in our Department of State who say we should be emulating China. If that doesn't go to the root of their thinking, I don't know what does. And if that's the way they think, what do they have in store, planned for you? You want proof that it's happening here? The D.C. Commissioner for Insurance, who's a highly regarded guy, he was appointed by the mayor of D.C., but he came out the other day and he criticized Obama's fix for Obamacare, saying that these insurance companies have spent years and millions of dollars recreating these plans based on a government mandate that was instituted by this president. And now he comes out and says, well, let's forget all that. You can go back and start selling the plans again that you had before. And they've changed their books and their business model, and they've created these new programs. They've cut doctors and eliminated hospitals. But let's forget all about that. Let's go back. Well, guess what? He came out and said, he criticized it, saying, this doesn't pass the smell test. And he was immediately fired. So you say it's not happening here? You're wrong. It is happening here. It's happening here just like it happens there. Bloomberg is just one example. They're afraid they'd be kicked out of China. Here, the media says, well, we can't report on that story or we'll never get another interview with the White House. So what? Your job is to educate and inform the public about what is going on. You are the fourth estate. You have an obligation, a fiduciary obligation, to not be the forefront leaders in the ministry of propaganda, the public mouthpiece of an administration. What are you, Pravda? See, the truth is that Bloomberg in China, their fears are actually well-founded. The last time they published a story like this, they were blocked. In fact, it got even worse. They can't get a visa for any of their people to work in China. And their Chinese language edition was blocked inside China after they did an expose in October of 2012, a year ago, that cast the premier, he was the premier at that time, into a negative light. And the publication since that time hasn't had a single residency visa approved. So the threats are real. The only difference between the threats there and the threats here is they can't withhold your visa here because you live here, you belong here. But what they can do is they can manipulate you. They can buy you. They can pressure you, coerce you, compromise you. And the media has given in. I call them the Ministry of Propaganda for a reason. They have completely, totally, and utterly capitulated to tyranny. Out of fear. Fear that their bottom line would be hurt. Fear. Fear that their people won't get a chance to sit and interview the president. Fear that when they're in the press corps conference, they're not going to get called on when their hand is raised. The truth of the matter is, that's not what the press is here for. The press is supposed to be working to educate and inform the masses about those issues which are around us, that are affecting your very lives. But they're willing to acquiesce and be quiet for the sake of access. You see, if we don't have an independent press, our country is lost. How will the people be informed of the tyranny that is being instituted upon you? It worked in Russia. It works in China. It's working in Russia. It worked in every communist bloc country. It worked for every government that has ever become totalitarian and authoritarian in their nature. I don't care what ism you put after it. But the number one thing they do is control the media. Because once you've controlled the media, you have an uninformed populace and they can't fight against what they don't know about. Every press organization, every single last one, all of the majors, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSLSD, Communist News Network, fake news. Yes, I say fake news. You know why? Because faux news won't tell you about Common Core. You know why? Because Roger Ailes, the leader of Fox News, and Murdoch, the president, the owner of Fox News, he won't tell you the truth. He also owns the Wall Street Journal. Well, he's deeply involved, and he wants Common Core to go forward. So he won't allow damaging news articles to run across his organization's website and television programs. Why don't you hear Common Core coming out of the mouth of Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity? Why don't you hear Common Core stories coming out from Bret Baier? Because those stories don't ever hit the wire. So it's not just Bloomberg that's guilty of treason, self-treason, against their own best interests, number one, and two, their obligation and their fiduciary responsibility to truthfully be exposers. That is their job. I'm not saying you can't do a story about the catbird and the dog that fell down the well and the tornado. I'm saying that when there are stories that implicate the entire nation, when your knowledge of a fact or an issue that's going on is so intrinsically tied to the future of our nation, they have an obligation to tell you about it. I read an article this morning about how Woodward came out and said, oh, it's going to get a lot worse. Woodward and Bernstein fame from the days of Nixon. Well, guess what? Where the hell was Woodward when we had Obamacare getting passed in the first place? Why weren't the press telling us what was really in that bill? And now they're all rushing forward to say, well, see, all this bad stuff is happening. Yeah, well, where were you when the American people needed to be informed about it before Nancy Pelosi came out and said, well, you got to pass it to see what's in it? I mean, it's ridiculous. Do you know what the fastest growing region for income is in the United States of America? Washington, D.C. Do you know that the average house in Washington, D.C. is on the market for 9 days? 9 days. In most parts of the country, people have had their homes for sale for 900 days. Where's the news? Where's the news that the fat cats are and the lobbyists and the people who suck the blood of the nation like ticks are becoming fat and swollen on your money? That the $7 trillion that this administration has spent is being siphoned off and fed to an ultra elite. Do you know that the vast majority of one percenters no longer live in New York and L.A.? They live in Washington, D.C. Hollywood is passé. They're the small guys now. New York, the super wealthy, the place where all the elite met. Nah, not anymore. Now it's D.C. That's where the real money is. Where's the press on that? Why do we hear about things afterwards? Where's the press on Fast and Furious? Where's the press on Benghazi? Why aren't they writing scathing articles? Why isn't the press explaining to America what impeachment is and how it's processed? Why isn't the press supporting the idea that immigration is bad for America until the borders are sealed? Why isn't the press talking to us about those things that matter? Why isn't the press telling us that globally, $123 billion a year leaves the United States to go back to people's foreign homes? Yes, these people who work here in the United States send back home money to their families through Western Union, $123 billion a year. That's money that leaves our shores that will never, ever return. Why isn't the press, the media, the national media, talking about prosecution for Obama's health care program? What, we can't talk about that? Well, let me tell you something. The Federal Trade Commission has rules out there. Those rules state that if you defraud people in an effort to sell your product, you go to prison. Orson Swindle, he served as the FTC chairman from 97 to 2005, an 8-year run. Here's what he has to say. There are a number of practices that if healthcare.gov were a private entity would result in being taken to the shed and horsewhipped by government regulators. Unfair and deceptive acts or practice in or affecting commerce. This includes, quote, a representation, omission, or practice that is likely to mislead the consumer, such that the consumer would be likely to have chosen differently but for the deception. Withholding information from healthcare.gov visitors about the actual price until you registered? Deceptive practice. If Amazon did that, if eBay did that, they would be shut down. Their leaders would be dragged before a criminal court. They would be sued civilly. Their entire organization would be in ruins. The misrepresentation, the lies. Where is the media? What price have they accepted for their silence and their betrayal of their absolute duty to the United States of America and the people in this country? You know why they owe you a fiduciary responsibility, to be honest? Well, first of all, they survive on the subscriptions and the advertising that they sell you. So therefore, they have an obligation to do the right thing by you. Other than that, it's what? Deceptive practices. If they sit there and they say, we are the purveyor of news, but they refuse to publish the truth, then they are deceptive in their practice. The truth is, you should basically not subscribe to any and pay any attention to any mainstream media whatsoever. I only follow their stuff because I have to talk about what's going on there. But the truth is, you should be sourcing alternative news systems that are willing to tell you the truth. Yes, you have to be discerning about what you read, but the truth of the matter is, if you want to be fully informed, if you want to be fair and balanced, you sure are not going to get it from any of them. If you want to be knowledgeable about what's going on, you should be reading alternative media. I've got sources on americasvoicenow.org. Go click on them and learn what they are. You don't have to experiment. Don't take my word for it. Find your own. But the truth of the matter is, listen, there is ample information out here about the betrayal, the treason, the absolute complete dysfunction and malfeasance of government, the high crimes and the misdemeanors that are poured upon us every day. We don't have to look to China to find it. We can find it right in our own backyard. But if you're not willing to go out there and educate yourself, if you're not willing to do the research and the homework necessary, then that's on you. Because the information is there. You know, you've heard the phrase that ignorance of the law is no excuse. You're obligated to know that when that sign over there says maximum speed 55 miles an hour, if you do 70, you're going to get a ticket. And the reason you keep it under 70 is because it's self-preservation. The reason that you don't rob a bank is because you know that it's illegal to rob a bank. Well, with all due respect, if you're not willing to go out there and look at the scandals, the betrayals, the wholesale sale of your government to corporate interests, private interests, banking, banksters, that's on you. I watched C-SPAN the other day, and I watched Janet Yellen being interviewed by Congress for her new upcoming seat as the head of the Federal Reserve. One of the congressmen said to her, I don't understand. You know, this low interest rate that you've kept where interest is at zero is killing the savers in America. The seniors, the people who have got CDs out there, who have put their money aside in 401ks. The only people that are making money are the fat cats. And her response was stunning to me. I'm going to find it, and I'm going to post it up there. You can find it on C-SPAN, but you'd have to hunt because it was like a 3-hour program. I know, when most of you are sitting there watching a movie, I'm sitting there watching C-SPAN. Janet Yellen being interviewed by these knuckleheads in Congress. What she said was utterly astounding. Well, I got to paraphrase it for you, but while it is true that our low interest rates are destroying savers, if they look at it in the overall whole context, it's good for the nation. So it's okay for Americans to be sacrificed on the altar of altruism so that people and entities and organizations in government can suck the money out of our nation like a vacuum. That's what she was saying. Where's the media talking about that this morning? Where's the media explaining to you what the Federal Reserve really is and who they are and what they do? Have you ever seen an expose? No. Has anybody really exposed the DHS and what they're doing? No. Has anybody exposed the fact that we now have a private army in this country that is as large as the army that we have overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq and run by the Pentagon? No. Where is the investigative journalism about Fast and Furious? Where are the investigative journalists who are getting inside information about the IRS scandals? About Obamacare scandal? Crickets. We're the Woodward and Bernsteins when we need them. And now we've got Woodward, fat, comfortable, dumb, and happy, sitting there saying, well, you know, it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. He was on an interview with Chris Wallace the other day, and he says, I have to think about this. It's a mess, clearly, but what it isn't, and I think you have to look at the question of motive. And the president's motive here, even though there are deep problems with the implementation, he wants to do something good for 30 million people and get them health insurance. So this isn't Watergate. This isn't Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Oh, really? Mr. Woodward, it's all of those things and more. This is an utter, flat-out deception. Deceptive marketing done by the United States of America, which, quite frankly, to use the phrase of the other phrase I read you earlier, which is that if you were to utilize those same deceptive practices, the FTC would hold you accountable. Representation, omission, or practice that is likely to mislead the consumer, such that the consumer would have likely chosen differently but for the deception. So I beg to differ, Mr. Woodward and Mr. Wallace. This is deception. It is fraud. It is Watergate. It is Clinton and Lewinsky. And it's worse. It was about rigging an election. Woodward goes on to say, yeah, there's no question about that. But you see all these stories in this frenzy out there. The game is over. The presidency is over. Some people are saying, I think that's not the case. But here's the other side of this, which I would agree with George Will on. When you go down the road, it's going to get worse because you talk to the experts and they'll tell you that this is a money issue. It's going to blow a hole in the budget. And when we go in 2 or 3 months from now and have more, are we going to shut down the government, quote unquote? Are we going to pay for the debt we have? All of a sudden, this is going to come to the table and people are going to say, my God, it's going to cost so much more money than we were spending on these things before. So how do you disentangle this now from Obama's head? Now, can he learn? This is an executive function, which is something he's not starred in so far in his presidency. And can he get it together? You know, everyone says he is bright. Can he learn to manage? Well, it goes without saying, Mr. Woodward, that this is going to blow a hole in our budget. Not the Obama budget, the United States of Americans budget. And the truth of the matter is, where were you when we needed to know that then? What's the payoff been for you, Mr. Woodward? In this case, we don't really need your 2020 hindsight. We needed your investigative journalism and your foresight. And now we don't need you at all. And that's the truth. Unvarnished. The truth is, had you all in the media told us what was really going to happen from Obamacare, had you informed the masses, it never would have passed in the first place. Had you all exposed Obama for the betrayer and the usurper and the foreign national that he is before he became elected in 2008, he would never have gotten elected. Had you informed us in 2012, when the ample evidence was there, he would have never been reelected. I call them the Ministry of Propaganda for a reason. That's what this is. Nothing short of deception, misdirection, propagandic examples that equally could be shown in Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, Soviet China, and any other dictatorship or authoritarian around the world. No difference whatsoever. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be back in just a moment. It really burns me up about that Woodward story. He has the nerve to throw that out there and say, well, it's not Watergate, it's not Bill and Monica Lewinsky. It's far worse than both of those. Both of those affected a small percentage, a small group of the population. Yeah, in Watergate, Nixon was trying to rig an election, but we got that in this president. Why isn't the media telling us about the fact that 115% of people in many cases, in many precincts, voted 100% for Obama? Where's the media talking about that story? Our election's been stolen. Our electoral system is an absolute sham. This segment is all about Americans and how they must stand to defend our nation. And I say that because, listen, we are done and out of time in terms of trying to figure out what to do. We can't sit around and wait for somebody to say, yeah, we're going to suddenly start acting properly. How can you believe that that's really the case anymore? How can you believe that somebody's finally going to step up and say, you know what, that's right. For the last 100 years, we've been defrauding and misrepresenting the truth and our loyalties and our obligations to the American people. Today, we're going to turn a new leaf over and go 180 degrees in the right direction, and we're going to start telling the truth. If you expect that day to ever come, you're a damn fool. The truth is, the time has come when we have to say we're either going to make or break. We can't sit around any longer and wonder, well, who will do something? The who's are totally compromised. They're totally corrupted. Every member of Congress has either been co-opted, compromised, coerced, manipulated, sold out. I don't care whether the price of their treason was money, ego, fame, power, or just some secret they wanted kept that the NSA's got on them. But the truth of the matter is, they're not working in your best interest. They're not going to come forward and say, yeah, for the last 100 years we've been lying to you, but today, as of today, we're going to start telling you the truth. If you believe that that's going to happen, you must be living in some kind of fantasy. You're reading science fiction. Who's going to stop the tyranny and the treasonous actions of our state and our federal governments? You think the people who are committing it are going to step forward and say, that today we're turning over a new leaf? Really? It is up to us, the masses, the unwashed masses. It is up to the livestock to say, we are tired of being livestock. And we're going to revert and change our position from livestock to a position of strength and control. And we're going to reassert our domination over this government. State and federal and county and city. Take over your school board. Take over your county government. Take over your city government. You're either going to do it now while you have an opportunity to do it peacefully, or you're going to have to do it at the point of a gun in short order. We can do this via massive, peaceful, civil disobedience. Just absolute uncooperation with everything. If every member of a school in a community said to the school board, we're taking our kids out of school until you cancel Common Core and you ban its use, what would they do? What would they do? Visit everybody's house with a gun and say, little Johnny better come with me? Yeah, your kid will miss a week of school. Big deal. You'll make a point that no one will be able to deny. Go into your city, your city council. Go into your county government and say, we want to pass a resolution that says Common Core is not accepted and allowed here in any way, shape, or form. Get 10,000 signatures. I don't care if you stand on a street corner or you knock door to door. Rally some friends around you. Talk about it at a diner one night. Get on the radio. Talk to a radio host. Put it in the paper. Do whatever you got to do. But get it done. I know that's only one issue. The issues are surrounding us. They're so impressive. They're so vast. They're so mounting that it's like we've got to cross Mount Everest with bare feet in the middle of the winter. But you better start somewhere. It is up to us to take our nation back by a peaceful, civil disobedience. Massive. And if it doesn't work, then to siege those governments. Place them under siege and say, listen, here we are. We're not like the bonus marchers where there's only 30,000 of us. There's 13 million of us. And we're not leaving until you do. It's also up to us to make sure that we have the appropriate group in place to step in, because governments cannot operate in a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, and it will fill it with either more traitors or the military. That's exactly what happened with Egypt. They didn't have a plan of action. 33 million out of 84 million people marched on Egypt's government and said, we've had enough with this guy Morsi. He is a traitor and a monster. He's worse than Mubarak was. 33 out of 84 million. Do the math, folks. That's what? 30. That's about what? 44% of the country? 44% of the country stood up and said, we've had enough with this tyrant. You know what the problem was? They didn't have an interim government built, designed, and custom made to put into its place. Instead, what happened is the military took it over in a coup. And God forbid they'll never get that back. Not civilian leadership. In this country, we don't have that as a choice because our Constitution prevents that from happening. So, where is the Tea Party? Where is the Constitution Party? Where are the parties like the libertarian groups? Why are you not all organizing, getting together, putting the heads of your Tea Party and your Libertarian and your Constitution Party together in a room and saying, we are going to collectively gather money and we are going to collectively do the following. One, we're going to take out ads in all the national papers that say, seeking qualified candidates for the new constitutional republic of the United States of America. Well, what will that serve? Well, first of all, you'll get a bunch of good qualified candidates. Then your job is to create a committee to sit down and assess who they are, interview them, qualify them, pre-vet them, and make sure that they're ready to run for that given state, locality, or whatever the case may be. Precinct. Replicate the existing government we have. 2 senators and 1 representative from each of the districts. Find those 5,000 qualified people. You only need 535 to replicate Congress. You need a president and a vice president. I don't know who they are. I don't know who they're qualified to be. But I know that I'm one voice out there, and I do know that if all of you put all of your money together, put all your power together, put all of your influence together, we would have a course of action instead of a fragmented group of people who are trying to sit there and protect their own little hamlet. I know I'm sick and tired of hearing Rush and these guys sit out there and they talk all day long, blah, 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 but not a damn one of them has come up with a legitimate plan. Well, take this one. Don't take it in total. Just take it and use it as the core, the basis, the kernel, the seed. Feed and water it, bring it to maturity. It's called the tree of frickin' liberty. How do I know it's called the Tree of Liberty? Because our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence declared it to be so. When our government no longer represents us, when long-term tyranny and abuse are present, when a plan is exposed that evinces to essentially turn us all into slaves, it is our duty, it is our obligation to find new protectors, to find new leadership, to reestablish, rebuild the republic we were given. Ben Franklin said to a woman who asked, "Mr. Franklin, what have you given us in this Constitution?" And he said, "Ma'am, it's a republic, if you can keep it." The question is, do we have the courage of our convictions to keep it? Do we have the courage to say, I'm willing to put it all on the line? Our founders sat there and said, yeah, we're willing to put it all on the line. We're going to pledge our lives and our fortunes and our sacred honor. And most Americans aren't willing to stand up and pledge a ding on their credit report. What kind of a patriotic group is that? Well, where are these groups that are sitting out there calling themselves patriotic and saying, but I can't work with those people over in the Libertarian Party? We fundamentally disagree. You know, those constitutionalists, they just have this whole thing about abortion. I can't take it. You know, those Tea Party people, they just don't believe in abortion strongly enough like we do, so we're not going to communicate. Really? Well, let me tell you something. It's about time you guys all locked elbows and said, we are all Americans. And we may disagree about a bunch of junk, but the one thing we don't disagree about is the fact that this nation is existing as a police state under tyranny right now. And that we, as Americans, had better salvage that, or we will lose our freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom to address our grievances with our government, freedom of speech, freedom to worship in the way in which we choose, our Second Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, our Fifth Amendment rights, our Ninth Amendment rights, 10th Amendment rights. It's all gone. All of it. Under tyranny, you can sit there and compartmentalize yourself all you want. You can have this part of the slave compound, and they'll have that part of the slave compound. But the truth is, you're all in a slave compound. Well, our ideology is different. Go ahead. Carry that ideology right into the grave. Keep pumping that kind of crap into the minds of your supporters, your followers, and we will go nowhere. You see, the time for sitting there and wringing our hands and saying, oh, well, we're doing the best we can, but, you know, we have to do it within constraints of the law. This is the self-same law that you recognize and openly declare to be extra-constitutional and in contravention of the Constitution? Well, then stop following it. You know, Thomas Jefferson told us a long, long time ago, when a law is passed that is outside of its constitutional authority, that law is null and void and of no effect. thousands of administrative agencies exist under laws that don't exist because they are null and void and of no effect. We didn't give the Congress the delegated authority to subdelegate our entire nation to extra constitutional administrative agencies. The EPA just came out with 6,000 new rules. 6,000. Tell me they're not going to affect you. Tell me they're not going to affect your insurance prices. Tell me they're not going to affect your coal prices, your energy prices. Tell me they're not going to affect whether or not you can build on a piece of land. Run your business. Americans had better get prepared. You know what? I wrote an article a while ago called "The Plan to Take Back America, Place All State and Federal Capitals Under Civil Disobedience Siege." I stand by that article. It's been seen by over 100,000 people. Probably 5,000 of people a month or more pick it up and read it. I'm not suggesting that this is the beginning and the end all. It's not the only plan out there. But I am going to tell you this. It does outline some basic foundational issues that need to be addressed. And one of the things I say in that is prepare yourselves for trouble, discomfort, hunger, cold, and fear. Well, let me tell you something. If we don't take action soon in a massive, peaceful, civil, disobedient uprising, you better prepare yourself for all those things anyway. The difference is that you're going to be doing it in chains instead of as free men. You're either part of the solution or you are the problem. You're not a part of the problem. You are the problem. Because when you have guilty knowledge of what has existed, what has been done to you, and you refuse to take corrective action, then you're no different than the person who's actually committing the treason. We've come to the end of a very, very long road here. And I wrote in that piece that, from this point, we go left to right. But I heard another better analogy to that. And I stand corrected because I think it even better represents the truth. We don't have, we haven't hit the end of the road here and with a choice of to go to the left or the right, like a T intersection. What we've hit is the end of the road where the choice is to go up or down. You see, this is going to take a combination of massive civil disobedience in the form of stop paying your taxes, starve the beast. Let's start with that. Go out there and change your tax exemptions on your W-9s and your W-2s to 100% so you are exempt from all federal taxation. Pay your state taxes, and even that exempt yourself from. Yes, start throwing that money into a kitty so that at the end of the year you can pay if we even have to, because hopefully look, if we don't get this thing under control shortly, it isn't going to matter how much you do. You're going to end up fighting this thing with guns if you don't fight it now peacefully. That's the truth. Anybody wants to sit there and deny otherwise, you can do that. There's only 3 courses of action that our path can take. 1, the first one is that we rise up and stop this thing right now while we have a chance to do that, peacefully, civilly, disobediently, and we take control of our government again. We do it within the confines of the Constitution, not through some long-winded Article 5 manipulation. I mean, I get that, but I have to tell you, I don't think we have the time. I'm in a quandary on the Convention of the States whole issue. But I can tell you this, by massive civil disobedience, we can beat this thing to the punch in a whole lot less time. And then have a Convention of the States when we can make sure that we're keeping the moneyed interests out. So your first option is we're either going to massively, civilly, disobediently take control of our government again. The second one is we're not going to do that, and we're going to go into abject slavery. And it won't be long before guys like me will no longer be on the radio, where guys like me will no longer be able to speak your piece, where you won't see books out there telling you what to do or talking about the abuse. You won't see the Ministry of Propaganda telling you. They already don't tell you. People like Schumer and Feinstein out there are trying to define who's a journalist so that they can take a guy like me and prosecute me for telling you the truth. So one, we solve it ourselves by grabbing the reins and massively, civilly, disobediently changing the course by taking those in power and removing them and replacing an appropriate group of individuals under our Constitution who have pre-agreed to be qualified and have signed in advance a letter of resignation that if they do not hold to the contractual provisions of their candidacy, they don't have an option. They have already pre-resigned. 2, we can go into the darkness of slavery, whimpering, whining, crying, belly aching, and begging our master not to beat us again. And 3rd, some small group will get to point 2 and say, I'm following what our original founders said, and I'm going to water the tree of liberty with blood. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a place we don't want to go. That won't be an open wound. It will be a mortal wound. And it will be one that will carry out, listen, if you think Afghanistan is bad, this thing would carry on in the United States of America for the next 50 years. We're still fighting the Civil War in the South, you knuckleheads. What makes you think this is going to be any better? And it's about the same crap, by the way, individual and 5th and 10th Amendment rights. No, it wasn't about slavery. Don't buy that hook, line, and sinker garbage you've been fed. Go do your homework. It was about states' rights and the ability for them to have their own destiny. The truth is, you better prepare yourself. And you better prepare yourself properly, because no matter what, there is going to be trouble. No matter what, there's going to be discomfort. No matter what, there's going to be hunger. No matter what, there's going to be cold. No matter what, there's going to be fear. The question is, are you going to feel all of that handcuffed, or are you going to feel all of that as a free man, as a free woman, as a warrior for your nation, for your family, for your community, for your republic? We can starve the beast into submission while simultaneously having in place a group of individuals pre-qualified, pre-vetted, pre-contracted to step into place. And when they evince the same type of oppression or tyranny that the current crop in Washington and your state capitals have accomplished, we've already got a pre-signed resignation letter from them in hand. Liquidated damages under the contract that say, if I violate any aspect of the Constitution, I am summarily removed from office. You don't have to ask for my resignation. You just grab me by the collar, yank me back to unemployment. Where's the Libertarian Party? Where's the Constitution Party? Where's the Tea Party now? That's what you all should be doing. Work it out. Work on the constitutional contract. The contract, not with America, but with our Constitution. You got to prepare yourselves for trouble, discomfort, hunger, cold, and fear. The question is, will you be standing there as a free man? Or will you be huddled, discomfortable or uncomfortable, hungry, cold, and fearful? I've outlined all of it in this article. The plan to take back America, place all state and federal capitals under civil disobedience siege. You can find it on americasvoicenow.org. I mean, look, I'm not saying that I'm some great oracle of the ages. I'm just saying that if we don't start somewhere, then all is lost. And I'm not living in a world like that. I'm not going to subject my kid to live in a world like that. The goals are real simple. Bring this country back to some level of true constitutional governance, where self-governance by the individual is the rule, and government, federal government, is microscopic in its impact on our lives. And federal and state governments are miniature in their impact on our lives. That's what our founders envisioned. And frankly, that was the whole principle upon which we started this endeavor. But mission creep has allowed the entire concept to be flipped upside down. Now government dictates everything to you, and you are fearful to speak out. Well, I remind you of the quote from Jefferson, in which he says, a government that fears the people is liberty. A government where the people fear government is tyranny. If you are fearful, then you are admittedly in tyranny. If that is in fact the case, and you have accepted the reality that we are living in tyranny, then the duty is yours to do something about it. I grant you, according to our declaration, we shouldn't change government for light and transient cause. But I got to tell you, this is not light and transient cause. I end this article. I'm going to post it on the bottom of the link for this. If you're watching this on YouTube, the article is out there. It's right in the description section of the show. Just click on the link and you can go to the website to see it. I've read this quote to you before many times, but I'm telling you right now, I can't say it enough. Still, if you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the time and the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves. Counselor, Your Honor, I rest my case. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Please email me on any of these topics that we talk about. I invite you and encourage you to do that. You can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. You're more than welcome to send me your thoughts and opinions on these stories and articles and stuff that we do. I want to hear your feedback, so send them to me. I'll even read them on the air. All right, we're wrapped for the day. americasvoicenow.org. We will see you tomorrow morning. Have a great day, America.